Since the new president, Donald Trump, took over, Europe has been facing a geo-strategic crisis. The Trump administration is conducting direct talks with Russia toward ending the war in Ukraine. The meeting between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov marks the first formal sit-down meeting between top U.S. and Russian diplomats since January 2022. It has enraged those directly affected by the outcome, namely the Ukrainians themselves and their European neighbors. Since the end of World War II, Europe has relied on the United States to stand up against Russia. However, as the U.S. shifts its focus to the Indo-Pacific, with China as its primary concern, that security umbrella appears to be fading. Yet, Europe bears much of the responsibility. It overplayed its hand. In this video, Defense Updates analyzes how Europe has landed itself in a precarious security situation.
Before we proceed, a word on NordVPN, which is one of the most trusted VPN brands worldwide that has a no-log policy validated by Deloitte, an industry-leading Big Four auditing firm. NordVPN provides an encrypted tunnel that protects your privacy by preventing external entry to your internet traffic, as well as enabling you to access content that's blocked based on geolocation. Best of all, with one NordVPN account, you can secure up to 6 devices at the same time. Get an exclusive NordVPN deal with massive savings by going to nordvpn.com/defense or clicking the link in the description. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee.
Time and again, the U.S. has been asking the NATO members to spend more on their military, but this has not worked out as it should have. For example, Germany, which is the largest economy in Europe, allocates around 1.5% of its GDP to the military. Speaking at a defense summit in Brussels, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the U.S. would no longer tolerate an imbalanced relationship with its allies and called on NATO members to spend much more on defense. The U.S. spends 3.5% of its GDP, but still accounts for 67% of NATO's total military spending, even though Europe and Canada make up nearly half the alliance's GDP. The deficits in the military budget have meant that Europe is woefully underprepared when it comes to dealing with any potential aggression coming from Russia without American support. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte admitted that U.S. President Donald Trump is being absolutely fair in demanding that European allies spend more on defense. He's right, of course, that the problem is not the U.S. and the problem is Europe, Rutte said at a breakfast discussion about Ukraine at the World Economic Forum after key Trump ally Richard Grenell criticized him over the Netherlands' defense spending and his own track record when he was Dutch Prime Minister. Trump's envoy for special missions, Richard Grenell, told the Davos panel, tuning in on video from Los Angeles, "We have the NATO Secretary General talking about adding Ukraine to NATO. The American people are the ones that are paying for the defense. You cannot ask the American people to expand the umbrella of NATO when the current members aren't paying their fair share, and that includes the Dutch who need to step up." He added, "And so, when we have leaders who are going to talk about more and more, we need to make sure that those leaders are spending the right amount of money." On August 8, 2008, Russian forces initiated the invasion of Georgia, starting Europe's first 21st century war. Although the conflict concluded within a few days, its repercussions continue to resonate even today, profoundly influencing the broader geopolitical landscape. The international response to Russia's military campaign in Georgia was surprisingly subdued, with Moscow experiencing minimal adverse consequences. In fact, EU leaders championed a ceasefire that seemed to align with Russian interests, while the U.S., under the new Obama administration, soon advocated for a reset in relations with the Kremlin. Understandably, many in Moscow perceived this accommodating approach as an informal invitation for further acts of aggression within Russia's traditional sphere of influence, 6 years after the Russo-Georgian War in 2014, Russia launched a far more extensive military campaign against Ukraine, where Moscow continues to occupy Crimea and significant portions of eastern Ukraine's Donbas region. In July 2021, Russian President Vladimir Putin presented several questionable historical arguments in his 5,000-word essay titled "On the Historical Unity of Russians and Ukrainians," which was published on the Kremlin's website. In this essay, he asserted that Ukrainians and Russians are one people. For instance, Putin claimed that Ukraine did not exist as a distinct state and had never been a nation. Instead, he argues that Ukrainian nationality was always an integral part of a triune nationality: Russian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian.
Furthermore, Putin asserted that Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians share a common heritage. This can be seen as a precursor to and defense of Ukraine's invasion. On the 24th of February 2022, Russia attacked Ukraine.
All along, Europe failed to see the telltale signs and ignored the potential risks. It's almost funny that Europe calls its first emergency meeting now when Russia-US talks are underway and they've been sidelined. According to most estimates, every day of the war in Ukraine costs Russia $500 million to $1 billion. President Putin is able to sustain this partly because the EU indirectly financed it to a great extent. Russia, which is an energy giant, the world's third-largest producer of oil and the second-largest producer of natural gas, has used energy revenue to accumulate some $630 billion in foreign exchange reserves. Before 2022, Europe heavily relied on Russia for both gas and oil imports, with roughly 40% of its imported natural gas coming from Russia, making it the largest single supplier to the continent. Some European countries even depended on Russia for over 80% of their gas needs. For example, Germany got more than half of its natural gas and more than 30% of its crude oil supplies from Russia. President Donald Trump pointed to this in July 2018 during his first term. Trump complained that Germany is making Russia richer. When the NATO Secretary General told Trump trade was a separate matter, Trump fired back, "How can you be together when a country's getting its energy from the person you want protection against or from the group that you want protection against?" he asked. "I think it's a very bad thing for NATO, and I don't think it should have happened, and I think we have to talk to Germany about it." Essentially, Europe funded Russian military modernization as well as its war machine that's now engaged against Ukraine.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the like button if you find the video interesting, and kindly provide your feedback in the comment section. This will help us improve.